Good morning. This is a follow-up pretty much and an inset to my previous video on the Battle of Gazala in 1942. As many of you know, this is a subject that I've studied a lot for about 35 years now, designing a game on it and writing articles and doing presentations both online here and at Origins over a couple of years. It's a favorite subject of mine. And now I'd like to go on to something dealing with the battle that is less well known, but probably should be paid attention to more. Now it's almost like a sideline. Not quite an afterthought, but getting there in a lot of histories. But I think it deserves a little more attention. And that is the role of Albert Kesselring, the commander-in-chief for the Mediterranean, his role in the battle, which was quite unusual. So let's begin and sit back, enjoy, and I hope you also watch the other video on the battle as a whole. Thank you. Just in the way of background, we'll start here. Here we have a picture of Erwin Rommel on the left, Field Marshal Kesselring on the right, and General Fritz Bayerlein of the Afrika Korps in the center. Three of the more important leaders of the Axis in North Africa here conferring. Now, General Feldmarschall Albert Kesselring was the German commander-in-chief for the Mediterranean and was effectively Rommel's boss. As nominally so, but in practice, things could go a little differently, as we shall see. His background was as an artillery officer, but he transferred to the Luftwaffe, in which he served throughout World War II, and he led Luftwaffen air fleets in the early blitzkriegs and the Battle of Britain. So his real role in World War II, at least at the beginning, was as an aerial commander. Then he went on to a more ground-oriented role throughout the war. He was respected by the Allies, especially as a master of defensive operations in Italy through 1943 and 1944. Some of the more recent scholarship has been more critical. For example, James Holland, in his book Casino 1944, he goes into some of the decisions that Kesselring made for a more forward defense south of Naples and then south of Rome as being less than ideal. And Kesselring was respected for his ability to hold ground, but the ability or the decision to do so may have been a little flawed and also directed by Hitler, and therefore Kesselring was reluctant to oppose it or offer a viable alternative solution, as opposed to Hitler's favorite, don't give any ground and hold as far forward as possible. That maybe it would have been better to defend north of Rome, but this is something that is more academic and more in the realm of war games at this point than actual history, that he did hold south of Rome and mounted a tenacious defense, which earned him the respect and thanks of Hitler and the respect of his colleagues. And because of this, he was one of the revolving doors of the German command in the West, facing the Western Allies towards the end of World War II. And whatever skills he had were pretty much negated by the fact that Germany was losing, and he had almost nothing to work with. But he did take over in the same role that Model, Rundstedt, Kluge had all had in various turns, and He was really the last one holding the bag against the Western Allies. And because of this, we have to look at him as an unusually versatile officer, a guy who could command air fleets and could also command army groups, and someone who was equally at home with land warfare as with air warfare. And in some ways, this made him not just unusually unique, but unusually qualified for command in the Mediterranean, where so much depended on air power and then on land warfare. Consider how much of the Mediterranean was fought in the air, especially Malta, which is something we will get into, just as Kesselring thought it was exceedingly important. Now, there were some clear differences of opinion and strategic priorities between Kesselring and Rommel before Gazala. Rommel preferred to attack Egypt and then maybe get to Malta. Malta being a key to the Mediterranean, sitting astride the shipping lines from Italy to North Africa that Rommel depended on for his logistics. Rommel would rather go after Egypt in the Suez Canal, do that first, and then possibly go after Malta, which was heavily fortified and possibly a rather tough nut to crack, although the Axis was making great progress into 1942 into neutralizing it. Kesselring took the exact opposite view. He thought that Malta should be the priority and Malta should be seized by a combined airborne amphibious operation. And then once Malta was secured in Axis hands, then Panzer Army Africa could move on to Egypt. And this is a fundamental disagreement and something that definitely affected Axis strategy in the Med. One of the things that Kesselring said was that Rommel had a hypnotic, his word, hold on Hitler, that resulted in the approval of Operation Venezia, the offensive at Gazala, that Rommel could go over Kesselring's head, break the chain of command, go right to the Fuhrer, and get his ideas accepted. And reading Kesselring's memoirs, I do see some resentment in there, that it wasn't all roses and unicorns between them. There was professional respect, but there was also resentment, especially on Kesselring's part, of Rommel's ability to get his way. One of the first things that happens in the Gazala battle is an attack by Gruppe Krevel, commanded by General Ludwig Krevel, formerly commander of the Deutsche Afrika Korps, who had taken over this job of diverting British Commonwealth attention from the main thrust to the south. And he is in command of one German motorized infantry regiment, along with the backbone of 4 Italian divisions in the 10th and 21st Corps. Now, Venezia starts on the 26th of May, 1942, and 3 days later, Prevel lands his plane among some troops, and he finds out they're not his own, they're British, and his war is over. He goes into captivity for the next 3 years, and then some beyond the end of the war. So his war is over, and this creates a major command gap. Now, the likely choice would have been Krevel's chief of staff, Major Friedrich W. von Mellenthin, who later wrote his memoirs on the war very self-serving and perpetrated that Queen Wehrmacht and we didn't do anything, it was the SS, and if only Hitler had listened to us, those two myths. And Major von Mellenthin could not accept. Maybe because he's a major, maybe because he's busy as chief of staff for the Gruppe headquarters, but he cannot accept. So what do? What to do, and who takes Crevel's job now that he is a prisoner of the British? Well, Andrew Kesselring. On insistence from many quarters, I agreed to take over the frontline command. This is something that Kesselring writes later that you got to wonder about. Who was asking? It's so unusual that I suspect that Kesselring is passing things off here, that while it wasn't a bad move, he's trying to shift credit or blame to someone else, namely subordinates, and that they insisted that he temporarily take over for Crevel. And I'm not sure I'm buying it, but this is what Kesselring writes. Remember, he's a field marshal. Here you have a general being captured, and a guy who's basically 2 levels up on the food chain is taking over his job. And not only that, consider that Kesselring was officially Rommel's boss and is now working as a subordinate. It's weird, I'll admit, and I can't think of any time that anything like this happened in World War II. You, the knowledgeable viewers, may know of one, but I'm stumped. I think this was a one-time unique situation on either side in World War II, that a field marshal makes himself operationally subordinate to a general whom he commands and is lower on the depth chart. And I don't think it's really bad at all. I think it's a matter of flexibility more than just doing things the wrong way. I think it's a matter of flexibility and adaptability, and that maybe Kesselring does deserve credit for taking over Gruppe Crevel. Now, one of the things that's never mentioned, I've never seen this mentioned, doesn't really come up in Kesselring's memoirs, is why was there no mention of an Italian general being considered? The force is overwhelmingly Italian, but they're not going to be commanded by an Italian. And maybe a German major, maybe a field marshal, but not an Italian. So this makes it most extraordinary. Just one more way that this gets to be very unique and even weird. Final analysis of the whole thing. First of all, Kesselring was not just Rommel's commander, but someone who had distinctly different strategic views. And this centered on the priority of either going after the 8th Army and then Egypt, as Rommel wanted, or taking Malta first, as Kesselring desired, with the difference of opinion being settled by Hitler in Rommel's favor after Rommel basically stepped over Kesselring's head. Now, I've seen, the way it looks to me is that Kesselring and Rommel were both content to accept the new arrangement under Crevel's capture. And again, this reveals a high degree of flexibility and adaptability among two very important and outsiders, especially in their enemies, respected commanders. This is a case of operational need taking precedence over personality and insistence on authority and the chain of command. It was necessary, one could argue, and but both of them were willing to adapt around this. And again, there's no visible regard for the Italians. Germans would sooner accept a German major or a German field marshal over an Italian general, whom you would expect to be of the proper rank and even nationality to command this multi-divisional force, 2 corps of Italian infantry divisions. So this is almost like the dog that didn't bite, that there's no regard for the Italians and so little respect, they won't even consider allowing an Italian to command Gruppa Krevel. So let's look at sources. I have a more comprehensive bibliography at the end of my video on the Battle of Gazala overall, but there's one more source I have to add, and it's Kesselring's his own memoirs, A Soldier's Record from 1954. And like many of the German memoirs, it's kind of self-serving, but this is what you expect with memoirs. And I think with the Germans especially, there's a capacity for pasting things over and creating certain myths, such as the infamous Queen Wehrmacht myth. We didn't do anything. No, we never did anything naughty. That was just the bad SS. Bad SS. You did it all. We were all on vacation or doing soldier stuff while you were murdering people, which actually is a distortion. But German generals took a lot of effort into perpetuating this. There's also the myth of if only Hitler had listened to us, maybe Germany would have won the war. But no, Hitler had to just listen to himself and a few ignorant toadies. Yeah, we're looking at you, Field Marshal Keitel. And he made all the mistakes that lost the war. Whereas German generals, in fact, were very loath to express their views to Hitler or say, no, mein Führer, bad idea. For example, try finding one who ever said that invading the Soviet Union in 1941 was a really, really good idea. You're not going to find very many who offer contrary advice to that. They were generally very supportive. But I think in this area too, and specifically North Africa and Gazala, I think that Kesselring's memoirs are worth consulting. Now, you may have a hard time finding this, or you might not. I got a PDF copy that I downloaded from archive.org, which is a wonderful site, not just for the World Wide Web Wayback Machine that it's probably best known for, but also as a repository of a lot of works that are now in the public domain that were acquired from libraries, scanned, and now available for free downloads. So you can find Kesselring's memoirs, A Soldier's Record, at archive.org, and you don't have to use interlibrary loan or pay through the nose for a worn-out copy. It's there, and you can get it, and I do have it on my computer. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your time, and I look forward to comments. And of course, please like and subscribe to my channel. And above all, please share with your friends and use it as you want for your own research, your own knowledge, and to expand your knowledge on all things military history, political science, teaching, and whatever surprises I can come up with. So thank you for your time, and you all have a nice day. Thanks.